Good morning, students of standard 11th. Today we are going to study topic reflex action from chapter 21, neural control and coordination. Spinal cord. It is a rod-like structure which remains present in the bony protective cover called as vertebral column. Students, spinal cord is actually a rod-like structure which remains present in the bony protective cover, which is called as vertebral column. Students, here we can notice in this picture that spinal cord is a rod-like structure because huge number of spinal discs remain present here, which makes it a rod-like structure. And if we notice here, then there is a presence of a protective layer, the bony outermost cover, which is called as vertebral column. Since vertebral column protects the delicate spinal cord. Students, in this diagram, you can also notice the presence of white matter and dark gray matter. The dorsal root ganglion, the efferent neuron, the afferent neuron, and the motor nerve neuron. The following are the two distinct regions of spinal cord. The two distinct regions of spinal cord are the white matter and the grey matter. White matter. It receives sensory impulses via sensory nerve present in sensory organ. So students, white matter actually receives sensory impulses via sensory nerve present in the sensory organ. So students, here if you will notice, then this is the sensory organ, that is the skin, which is also called as receptor. So students, in this skin, the nerve cells, particularly the sensory nerve cells, remain present, which is represented by the sensory neuron. This sensory neuron, students, actually carries the sensory impulses from the skin to the. So students, this sensory nerve carries the information from the sensory nerve, sensory organ, that is skin. So students, from the skin, the information is being carried by the sensory nerve to the white matter and thereafter to the grey matter. So students, this is the white matter, you can see here, you can note, this is the white matter, and this here is the grey matter. You can also show students, this is being showed here, this is the grey matter. So very distinctly we can see the white matter here and the grey matter here. So this is why we have defined the white matter receives the sensory impulses via sensory nerve. So in this diagram also we can easily notice that the sensory impulses is being received by the skin and is further dumped on the white matter and thereafter to the grey matter or the spinal cord. Grey matter. The response from the grey matter is transmitted. The response from the grey matter is transmitted via motor nerve to the effector. So students, here if you will concentrate, you can notice that in this diagram, this internal region of the spinal cord is called as the grey matter. So students, this area which you can see here, this is the grey matter, and this grey matter transmits, students, here you can notice that it transmits the instructions or the informations via the motor nerve to the effector. So students, the efferent nerve which you can see here, efferent nerve is actually the motor nerve. So students, this motor nerve carries the response to the muscles, that is the effector. So students, the point here to understand is that the sensory nerves which you can see here present in the skin will carry the information to the white matter and thereafter to the grey matter by the afferent nerve, and this afferent nerve is the sensory nerve. And the grey matter will transmit only the response from the grey matter to the effector via the efferent neuron. So students, here there is afferent neuron and here there is efferent neuron. This is the sensory nerve and this is the motor nerve, and this information of response will be transmitted to the muscles, that is the effector. Reflex action. The quick involuntary response to a specific stimulus via spinal cord is called as reflex action. So students, if you notice here about the reflex action in this diagram, then you will be able to understand that the stimulation of the pen insertion inside the skin, students, this is the skin, a small part of the skin. So when in this small part of the skin, when the pen is inserted, then this information of the insertion of pen inside the skin is carried by the sensory nerve to the white matter and thereafter to the grey matter, and this response is quite quick and involuntary. So students, this information will be reacted by the response via the grey matter, and this response will be carried by the motor nerve which you can see here. So students, this motor nerve will thereafter transmit the response to the effector, that is the muscles. And students, this response to the specific stimulus, students, here the specific stimulus is the insertion of the pen inside the skin and driving away of the skin or the palm away from the insertion of the pen is quick and involuntary. And because this whole process takes place in the spinal cord, that is why it is called as reflex axon. Students, now let's discuss an important question. What is reflex arc? It is the exact pathway which is required in the reflex axon. Thank you, students.